In 1985, 45 superstars, including Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, Quincy Jones, and Ray Charles, come together to record We Are the World. This song was made to be voice of the people in Ethiopia, where a devastating famine was occurring at the time. Out of a population of 40 million, 8 million were severely affected by this famine, and 2 million people were displaced from their homes. At the time, the entire world relied to support the campaign. However, in 1985, those organization efforts in Ethiopia did not even mention the fate of over 20 million Sudanese who were being left to their own devices. By 2024, Sudan was forgotten, ignored, and overshadowed by other crises. Millions of people living in this country have been struggling with a long-standing civil war. The vast country is now in ruins due to the power struggle between two former allies. Since the civil war began in 2020, reports indicate that at least 20,000 people have lost their lives. However, it is believed that the actual numbers are much higher. Population is in desperate need of humanitarian assistance. Over 9 million people has been forced to leave their homes. We are talking about more than 9 million people. Thousands of houses, schools, hospitals, and essential civil infrastructure have been completely destroyed. Moreover, the economy has been devastated. Experts predict that rebuilding the country will take at least a generation. This situation serves as a crucial example of how major organizations like the United Nations have failed to respond effectively to modern crisis, a lingering issue from the Cold War era. Sudan is the country experiencing the most severe hunger in the world, with over 20 million people in need of humanitarian aid. The tragedy is so immense that refugees are resorting to eating dirt grass and leaves just to survive. By late 2018, protests had begun in Sudan. The target was Omar al-Bashir, who had been in power for 30 years. In response to economic hardships and political repression, the people of Sudan took to the streets. The protests reached their peak in 2019, resulting in hundreds of casualties. On April 11, 2019, the Sudanese army overthrew and arrested Omar al-Bashir. The violent protests and acts of civil disobedience by the Sudanese people fundamentally disrupted the political system in the country. Al-Bashir's three-decade rule was brought to an end, and the situation in Sudan worsened significantly. In 2019, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who will be frequently discussed today, led the commanders who overthrew Omar al-Bashir. The soldiers formed an interim council to take control, but the protest could not be quelled. During this process, al-Burhan was appointed president of the interim military council. However, the protest did not case, and later that same year, the military and Sudan's civilian politicians managed to reach an agreement. According to the agreement, Sudan would undergo a transitional period of 3 years, after which an all-civilian government would be established. 3 years have passed, but at the end of these 3 years, al-Burhan staged another coup, liquidated civilian politics. On the other side of the civil war in this man, Hannan Dagalo, also known as Hemedti. These two can be seen together in the same photo frame because they were one partners in this current conflict. The Rapid Support Forces, led by Hemedti and one of the parties involved in the war in Sudan, was established in 2013. The large quasi-military group formed alliances with various tribes in the country, becoming a regional power. Dagalo played a significant role in the ousting of Omar al-Bashir. Despite being known for serious human rights violations and war crimes, the Rapid Support Forces under Hemedti's leadership participated in Abdel Fattah al-Burhan's coup. Hemedti remained a partner until very recently, up 23. In summary, the partnership between al-Burhan and Dagalo was strong when they shared the common goal of overthrowing Omar al-Bashir. However, disagreements soon emerged, and these two former partners quickly became enemies. The violence in Sudan has reached a stalemate with the involvement of international actors. At the center are two commanders who cannot come to an agreement. Both have other powers backing them. Let's briefly examine this chess game in Sudan, where only the people are suffering. Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Since the beginning of the civil war, his most important ally has been Egypt, Sudan's neighbor. After the conflict erupted, 500,000 Sudanese were forced to fly to Egypt as refugees. Burhan and Egypt's President Sisi share some similarities. Both came to power through coup. Sisi seized power in 2013 by overthrowing Morsi, while Burhan staged his own coup in 2021. Both are military coup leaders. Another supporter of Burhan is Eritrea, which was one of his first stops when he resumed foreign travel last year. On the other hand, Iran has also been supporting Burhan. Since late 2023, it has been known that he received financial backing from Iran. Additionally, Iran-made drones have been found in use by Burhan's forces in Omdurman. Among Burhan's supporters is Zelensky. You might wonder what Ukraine has to do with this. The connection lies in the fact that Russia's mercenary company Wagner has been quite active in Sudan. Since Hemedti receives support from Wagner and therefore Russia, Zelensky attempting to stand behind Burhan. Last September, Zelensky and Burhan unaccepted meeting in Ireland to discuss the issue of illegal armed groups financed by Russia. Having identified the key allies of Burhan, let's set them aside and turn to Hemedti. Since the war began, Hemedti was fought against Muslim groups in the region. He presented himself as a shield against the deeply rooted Muslim figures in the military from the al-Bashir era. He resolved his financial issues with support from the Gulf. The United Arab Emirates is Hemedti's primary source of funding. Clearly, Sudan's gold has not been sufficient to finance such a war. In 2022, Russia's mercenary company Wagner, under the leadership of Prigozhin, was involved with an illegal gold trading in Sudan. As a result, they faced sanctions from the United States, although Wagner claimed to have exited Sudan. Sudan's gold has been leaving the country first through Wagner and then through other companies passed on by Russia, traveling from hot regions to cooler ones all the way to Moscow, right to Putin's doorstep. Now, we arrive at the topic of gold, which may be the most critical point of this video. After South Sudan declared independence in 2011, Sudan experienced a dramatic 75% decrease in oil exports, as the oil resources remained in the south. Since then, gold from North Sudan has become a crucial resource for the country. In 2022, Sudan generated over $2 billion in revenue solely from gold. That year, it was the 16th largest gold producer in the world and the 4th largest in Africa. However, the true value of Sudan's gold is at least 2-3 times greater than what has been mentioned. Those responsible for the country's dire state, primarily the individuals smuggling this gold abroad. But it doesn't stop there. Gold extraction is an extremely arduous task that requires careful attention. Miners must use substances like mercury and cyanide. When these materials are used recklessly and without proper precautions, they devastate the environment. When we talk about environmental destruction, it's not just an ecological issue. Unconscious gold mining is ruining lands that could be used for agriculture and livestock by the Sudanese people. For instance, a report published by Radio de Banga in 2022 focused on 3 sites in the northwestern part of Sudan's Gadaref state, 2 of which were mining sites and 1 a waste site. The report indicated that all 3 sites had been contaminated with both lead and cyanide. This is just one example. Currently, a large portion portion of Sudan's land has been heavily damaged. Sudan has two legal frameworks governing its gold mining activities. These are the mining law established in 2007 and the Mineral Wealth and Mining Development Law enacted in 2017. Both laws are extremely intricate and lack comprehensiveness, allowing anyone to enter Sudan and mine gold with minimal restrictions. As a result, they focus on carrying out their work in the easiest and most careless way possible. These regulations lack comprehensive studies on environmental safety and public health, which companies exploit. This is what we mean by exploitation and pillage. Okay, so who are the foreign companies that are plundering Sudan? The Russian company Wagner has rapidly become involved in gold mining operation in Sudan, creating space for Russia at the table. Because this is like a dining table where these international actors need to feast on Sudan's underground riches and gold. Hamdan Dagalo received weapon support from Wagner in exchange for access to gold resources. This allowed Russia to secure valuable assets in Sudan. This is not the first time the Russians have plundered Africa. If you ask, Sudan is selling its gold willingly, but that is not the case. Russia has armed one side of civil war at a critical moment, effectively seizing Sudan's gold. This is not their first takeover. Modern Russia continues the tradition of the USSR by intervening in African countries through coups. The United Arab Emirates is one of the continents responsible for fueling the civil war in Sudan and bringing things to this point. As mentioned earlier, for the United Arab Emirates administration, Sudan is key to their strategies in the Middle East and Africa. They are gaining fighters from Sudan for the conflicts in Yemen and benefiting from its gold. Emirates played a significant role in the ousting and the formation current actors. Egypt is another country that supported the coup in 2021, as we discussed earlier. Egypt has a direct connection to the wars in Sudan, and hundreds of thousands of refugees fleeing Sudan have poured into Egypt. Unlike Sudan's other neighbors, Egypt has profited more from this refugee influx. Chad, another neighboring country, has been significantly affected by the influence of Sudanese migrants relative to its population. Speaking of Chad, it has closely monitored all these conflicts in Sudan. Peace agreements, proxy war, and everything happening in Sudan concern Chad. Hemedti has connections to Chad's politics and military. Chad is also one of Hemedti's sources for weapons. Due to the fire in Sudan, imports through the Red Sea port have been cut off, affecting the economies of neighboring countries. Europe is complicit in Sudan's current state. In the 19th century, after the weakening of the Ottoman Empire, Sudan fell under British colonial rule. The British and Egyptians jointly ruled Sudan as Anglo-Egyptian Sudan for 57 years. During these 57 years, Britain came from about 500 kilometers away and began economic exploitation through agriculture, as Sudan's underground riches were not as well known at the time. They established large irrigation systems for cotton production through a plan known as the Gencer scheme. Cotton produced in Sudan became a key raw material for Britain's textile industry. What's happening in Sudan has once again highlighted an inadequacy of international organizations such as the United Nations, African Union, whether regional or global. Events in Sudan could have been prevented. Cities like Khartoum, Port Sudan, and Omdurman needs not have been lost. All of this occurred right before our eyes. Sudan is already a country where military coups happen every 5 years. International actors saw this instability as an opportunity and flocked to Sudan's gold. They have ravaged the land, leaving its people in misery and facing one of the worst famines the world has ever seen. Yet they have not left, because Sudan's gold is still not depleted. Once they have extracted every last bit, they will leave Sudan in this disgraceful state, gathering their belongings and flying out like Americans did last month when they left Niger. However, all of this could have been avoided. What's happening in Sudan is not complicated or unclear. You are witnessing a classic case of mafia-style thuggery, but as I mentioned earlier, impossible to resolve such issues with institutions left over from Cold War, especially given the current global situation.